What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So today we are back going to be talking about Survivor Season 37, David vs. Goliath. Happy with the episode turnout. My boot order is correct with Jessica going second, and I had Alyssa going first. So either way, I would have been happy with the turnout. So my name is Rachel.
And I'm Alyssa, and I'm pretty sure my boot list is it's already screwed and it's only the second episode, but I never pretended I was good at doing those, so I'm okay with my life.
Yeah, I think this was like a really good jam-packed episode. We saw so much like tribe dynamics, people talking with new people, stuff like that I really enjoyed the episode. We learned a lot about like the characters and stuff this season.
Yeah, I'm really happy with the editing so far this season. I feel like it's a lot more balanced than it's been in some previous seasons. Like, I feel like I could name more than 2 people, which is better than we were doing this time last season. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, so we're going to start by talking about the David tribe, everything that happened on their camp, and then go into the Goliath tribe. Definitely a lot to talk about. So starting with, we have the Nick and Christian alliance that they named Mason-Dixon line, which I thought was really interesting. I'm like, is this Big Brother? We're naming these things now. And I think it really helps, like, sort of when you do have a name for an alliance, that it makes you feel more committed to something because you're like, oh, we have a name, it's solid versus we're just a cluster.
I think it's interesting because like a lot of alliances I feel like get named in retrospect. Like we as fans will call them something, but they won't call themselves anything, which is like, that's just interesting to me. I'm not a super big fan of them naming themselves, though, just because I feel like it was kind of a cringy name, but...
Both of Nick's alliance names are sort of cringy, with Mason-Dixon line and then him and Elizabeth, where we saw the thoroughbreds last episode. So I don't know. Hopefully he's like coming up with them on the spot and not like bringing Googled cool names from before the show onto the show. Like, otherwise it'd just be really sad because his names are not like super good. It's just sort of funny, interesting, I guess.
Yeah, like, it's interesting because we live in Maryland, so obviously we know a lot about the Mason-Dixon line, but I wonder, like, how many people outside of our general, like, clumpy area would know about it, because I feel like it's one of those things where I'll tell people, like, oh, Maryland's technically the South because we're south of the Mason-Dixon line, and they'll be like, you're south of the what now? So...
yeah, I guess that's really interesting. I liked the Baltimore, Maryland shout-outs this episode. It was like, oh, haha, you know, kind of stuff. But no, yeah, I usually just tell people I'm, like, from Baltimore because no one really knows, like,
Maryland,
any other places or generally not even where Maryland's located. So good for them knowing what the Mason...
Yeah, like, a lot of people don't even know that Annapolis is the capital of Maryland and not Baltimore, so...
Yeah, so I think it was good on Nick this episode. We see that he has good awareness because he says like, oh, he knew he was going to be the one voted out of the game kind of thing. Like, he was only supposed to have 3 days in the game. And I think, yeah, like, you know, like we said in last episode, things do change, and we saw them change this week with Nick no longer being on the chopping block. And I think it's really interesting how we saw the target switch and everyone was more on board of getting maybe a weaker person out on the tribe. And it just so happened that they were getting weak females, which is sort of the thing. But like, it's interesting because you can't really vote out Nick after you lose Pat. So that sort of saved him.
Yeah, I feel like Pat leaving doubly saved Nick because not only did it prevent him from going home at that tribal council, it also gave him more time to like strategize and I think actually start at least trying to pull his weight around camp. So I think that the extra 3 days definitely did make a difference for Nick.
No, yeah, 100%. Him and Christian are bonding. And like Christian said, because they didn't go to tribal council first week, they still have the ambiguity of alliances. Everyone can still be, oh, haha, buddy, buddy friends. Because if you don't go to tribal, you don't know where people fall. And I think it's really interesting how, like, last season, Chris Noble didn't go to tribal council until the merge and then was voted out straight at the merge. So it's sort of like the thing where maybe you want, like to lose a challenge, to go to tribal to see where the lines are drawn in the sand kind of thing. Because now, after this tribal with Jessica going home, technically, yeah, like, where people are semi-falling and you could be on the short end of the stick.
Yeah, I think Christian made a great point when saying that, like, not going to tribal last episode gave them more time to be in limbo land. So that was definitely interesting.
Which I feel like it's honestly good to be in limbo land at the beginning, because then you can all be friends. You don't hate people already or that kind of thing. But after a certain point, I feel like you definitely, if the Goliaths keep winning kind of thing, you definitely want to consider the option of maybe throwing a challenge, because I think it's super dangerous, especially a tribe swap or something like that coming up in the next few weeks, probably before a merge. If you go into a tribe swap and you don't know where these people fall kind of thing, and even if you have been on the same tribe with them the entire time, maybe they hated your guts and you just didn't know, and then going into the merge, it's just better, I feel like, to know where people may fall rather than guessing. And that's what's difficult. If you don't go to tribal council, you don't know.
Yeah, I feel like ideally, if they don't do any swaps or merges or whatever, I'm pretty sure they're going to go to 3 and then go back to 2. But if they didn't do that and they just stayed the 2 distinct tribes until the merge, I think it would be good to go to tribal once, because then you know where everyone stands, but you also have the numbers for the merge.
Yeah, exactly. And Nick, he says he's either winning the game or is going to die trying. One of the first people to mention winning this season so far. I feel like everyone always gets those winner confessionals where they say they're going to win the game kind of thing. And so Nick said it this episode. I feel like so many people are on the Nick and Christian and maybe Gabby bandwagon. Those 3 are definitely very popular on the David tribe. So I think it's very interesting. A lot of people are now really rooting for the Davids and think a David is going to win the game.
Yeah, I think it's interesting just because I do think that Christian at least could win the game. And the longer we spend with the Goliath tribe, we'll get to talking about them later in the podcast, but the longer we spend with them, the less I like all of them.
Yeah, honestly, I really like the people on the David tribe. So speaking of, we have Davey, who is the self-proclaimed provider of the season and also an idol finder. And I was like, dang, this is such a good surprise. We saw him catch the octopus last episode, and then this episode he gets this screen time with catching the salamander, stuff like that. And then he freaking finds an idol. I'm like, I did not expect that from Davey. I guess we don't really know them, but I was pleasantly surprised and happy for him.
I think it's interesting because a lot of the people who cast themselves as the provider of the tribe, they kind of rest on their laurels. I know Ozzy did this all the time where he was like, they're not going to vote me out because they need me for food. And it's that's just, that's not how this game works. So I thought it was good to see that Davey kind of had a social strategy as far as being the provider and being the one everyone likes, but he's still also playing a strategic game and looking for idols and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like being the provider solely could have worked, at the beginning seasons of Survivor, but rather now you need to play all aspects of the game. Don't be a Joe Anglum and only have the physical aspect. Come on now. So yeah, I like that from Davey as well. And he found the idol alone, so no one knows, unlike freaking Dan, which we'll talk about, but no one knows Davey has this idol, and he has a lot of leverage now, I feel like. And I don't know. I think really good for him. He has, power, even though he didn't really vote on the right side of the votes. This episode, I feel like we don't necessarily know where Davy falls in terms of strategy because we never really saw him in the loop with like the B, Carl, Jessica alliance. I guess Davy and Carl are friends kind of thing, but we never really saw Davy talk strategy with anyone this episode.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting just because generally when you're out of the strategic loop this early in the game, that's like not a good thing. So I'm really interested in seeing Davy talk strategy more if he is going to continue to be like a viable contender in this game. But at least like no one really knows about his idol, so that's good.
Yeah, and I guess it's something that could be used to their advantage if Davy, B, and Carl are on the bottom of the tribe kind of thing. But I don't know. Honestly, I feel like Davy, it's too early to play the idol for someone else because there's literally 18 people left in the game. So I would rather that he keeps it for himself. But I don't know. You never know, I guess, in that kind of situation.
Yeah, especially because we haven't really been shown to like see Davy in like a super tight alliance. I think it would be interesting if he played it for someone else, but I have a feeling that he's gonna hold on to it for a while just because like it seems that the early idols generally try to hold on to them at least until the merge, but we'll see.
Yeah, Davey had a funny line. He was like, "It smells like an idol." And then I'm sort of like, what does an authentic idol smell like kind of thing? It looked easily faked, which was very interesting, which was probably the point in having just like the string and shells because then it's easily fakeable on the island and you can make your fake idols out of string and beads and it looks like a real idol. So I guess something to keep your eye out for because it definitely looks like something that's easily reproducible by someone.
Yeah, and I feel like that was kind of intentional. I know Jeff Probst has said that he like really likes it when people try to do stuff like fake idols, etc. And you actually hear this mentioned about how Dan's idol is real because Jeremy saw the paper and not just because of any like virtue of the idol itself looked authentic or whatever.
Yeah, so I think that's very interesting. Fake idol season. So moving on to Carl. Like we said with Nick and Christian, they were on board with getting a smaller female out, didn't really say a name. Carl comes out and says, let's get Lursa out. She is the quote unquote weakest female, and then quote unquote everyone was on board. And I guess, yeah, because the lines weren't drawn in the sand, we see the scene where Carl is telling Jessica, Nick, and Elizabeth that Lursa could be the plan to be voted out. And then, little do you know, though, that Elizabeth is super tight with Lursa. So Carl sort of spilled the beans. But, like, when the tribal lines aren't drawn in the sand, you probably think everyone's on board for, like, one person because of the tribe unity.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we talked last podcast about how Lursa and Elizabeth were kind of the odd couple, and I think that's playing to their advantage because, like you said, Carl didn't really know that Elizabeth and Lursa were tight, and I feel like if they didn't have that connection, then it could have been Lursa that went home because she wouldn't have even known that she was on the chopping block.
Yeah, and it's like that alliance made day one kind of thing. Elizabeth could have not have stuck her neck out for Lursa and just been like, okay, this is where the tribe is going. Let's go and keep everyone happy. But because they had that like pact or whatever from day one, where it's like, if you hear my name, I hear your name, we'll tell each other. And I think really good on Lursa this episode that she didn't freak out when Elizabeth approached her. She didn't go and yell at Carl. She didn't blow up at camp or whatever, but she like kept her cool, which I really appreciated, opposite of Natalie from Goliath tribe. So I think that really helped Lursa being able to keep her mouth shut and just go into the immunity challenge. And then after the immunity challenge, like not point fingers, not blow up, but keep her cool.
Yeah, I think She was obviously a little irritated, but I feel like that's forgivable considering that like someone brought up her name, but like you said, she didn't immediately start like grilling Carl about it. And I feel like it'll be interesting to see when they show next week the like return from tribal what Carl has to say about Lursa being the one, or Lursa not being the one to be voted out. Because I feel like Carl didn't really pick Lursa because she was Lursa, but because she was a small female. So since Jessica is equally a small female, I wonder if he'll be like chill with it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's interesting. So Elizabeth throws out Jessica's name, and I think that was the best part of the episode. Lursa just kept on saying, like, I'm not the weakest female. I won that first challenge. Like, stop calling me weak. But if you know you're the target, you have to put out someone else's name, or else you'll still be the target, which is like, I don't know. I was sort of getting annoyed that Lursa just kept saying that, because it's like, if you're getting votes, you can't say you're not weak. Put out another name and say they're weaker than you so you can try to switch the votes. I think Elizabeth throwing out Jessica's name, literally the turning point for Lursa's game, because that got people on board to vote Jess out.
Yeah, like it's like when, this is a stupid analogy, but I'm gonna say it anyway. When you're like trying to decide where to go for dinner, and whoever you're with is just like, no, I don't want to go to this place. I don't want to go to this place. It's like you can't just shoot down my suggestion without giving one of your own. Come on.
Yeah, like give us some freaking options here. So Elizabeth throws out Jess's name. And I think it was interesting. Lursa mentions how Jess is the one keeping B and Carl together. So you're taking out the linchpin, the glue between those two. And it makes a lot of sense. You know, like get rid of the person that keeps those two together. You know, the middleman, the one connecting them, and then B and Carl might be semi more Lone Rangers now rather than a threesome with B, Carl, Jess.
Yeah, and like having Lone Rangers is obviously helpful because then they can split to different sides of the line, and it's like it's better to have them split and have one of them come to you than have them stay together and not be on your side. So
yeah,
that
so
was
I think
definitely a good idea.
Yeah, potentially you got rid of a threesome this episode. I mean, depending if they were actually that close or they were just that close based on looks, but they weren't actually like really into working with each other as close as maybe a Gabby and Christian, or Gabby and, or Nick and Christian kind of thing, or even Lursa Elizabeth alliance. And I think also Gabby becomes paranoid was not a good look on her. I feel like I was sort of, it's just an uncomfortable scene. And I don't know, she was sort of being whiny with Christian on the beach. But then I guess it sort of solidifies their alliance as well, because Christian really wanted, I guess, you know, to make the vote go Gabby's way.
Yeah, she really has him wrapped around her finger. Like all of the guys in this episode were like kind of stupid. I feel like Carl and Davy were the only ones like not kissing up to some girl or other. Like, what are you guys doing?
I don't know. I think Christian and Nick made their own decision, you know, because they could have technically been the swing votes in it, going either to vote Jess out or going either to vote Lursa out. And when Christian goes up for the tribal council, like talking when he's voting, he's like, I really wish I could have worked with you, but it like didn't, like it's not working out. And like that could have gone either way. I feel like it was like, oh, is that Jess or is that about Lursa kind of thing?
Yeah, I just feel like with Christian, like Gabby definitely played him like a fiddle. So, like he did make his own decision, but I feel like it was a heavily, heavily, heavily influenced decision.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, because I think Gabby and Christian are close. We don't know how, like, to the extent of how close they are, but I think they can definitely be like a power duo. And like in that kind of situation, you do have to give and take. And like if you disagree kind of thing, you have to come to a consensus. And in this situation, Gabby wants Jess out because she was afraid that she would be the next one to go after Lursa. So like it makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. I feel like it all makes sense, but I still think that Christian could be persuaded to vote against basically anyone if Gabby asked him to.
Okay. Valid point. Yeah. I think um it makes yeah, I think Gabby's paranoia makes sense as well. At first I was like, "Oh, she's like I don't know, it was just sort of off-putting, but like watching it back a second time when Gabby's talking with Lursa and B on or when Gabby's talking with B and Jess on the raft, literally Jess and B did not give her anything. They're like, "Oh, we don't want to talk about it. No one wants to talk about it." And it's sort of like if you don't have a 100% solidified plan, that makes people nervous and you sort of want to make people feel comfortable. So I think bad on B and Jess for like just dismissing Gabby, and then Gabby's like, "Okay, bye y'all," like after a 2-second conversation about who the vote is.
Yeah, like even if you don't have a solid plan, lie. Like this is Survivor. You can lie.
Yeah, so I think that was a down point for Jess and B. And yeah, just their answers were so short too when you watch that back. It was like very, very interesting. And I think this fivesome that we see of Gabby, Christian, Nick, Elizabeth, and Lursa, I'm hoping that could be a cool fivesome because you have like different twosomes in that fivesome. So no one's I mean, it's sort of more equal rather than a fivesome where there's a definite totem pole ladder because there's so many connections. Gabby and Christian are together, Christian and Nick are together, Elizabeth and Nick are together, and Elizabeth and Lursa are together. So like they're all good. I feel like that would be a very, very interesting alliance if they are or like want to work together in the future.
Yeah, I like alliances, like you said, that are kind of messy just because I feel like it is more interesting TV, especially if it gets to the point where they turn against each other. Like, perfection.
Yeah, so tribal council, very cool setup. I was nervous because we went into it like it could really honestly go either way. Um, I think tribal council with B, I don't know. So many people are like not happy, I guess, with the way B is playing. They're like disappointed or whatever. And I don't know. It makes sense. B is like she messed up the challenge. I don't know why you would put the small girl on the big pole challenge, though. Wouldn't you want a tall person like Carl on there? Would make sense. Also, in the challenge, it looked like they stopped trying with the puzzle, but that's another story. But B says she's voting based off strength after she, I guess, messed up messed up the ladder thing, but that's whatever. And you can definitely tell she's a recruit because she said she's only seen one season and she's really voting on the way how seasons should go on Survivor. So I feel like you can definitely tell she's not a fan of the show. You know, she doesn't know the game as well as other people, and that could screw her over.
Yeah, I did like what B said after the immunity challenge though, when she like gave them the pep talk about like you can't go into it with the mentality that you're gonna lose to the Goliaths. Because I do think that's definitely a big thing that they need to remember because I feel like your mental state is half the battle.
Yeah, so the way they read the votes was really cool. It was like 4 and then 2 and then 4-4. Jess gets voted out. She says in her after vote out thing, like, "Oh, they just felt threatened by me." And I don't know. I was sort of like, okay, girl, like, first person voted out. Can you really say that they were threatened by you? I feel like it's more of they're, oh, threatened by me if you're voted out 6th, 7th, 8th place, not first one out of your tribe. Doesn't make any sense, but okay.
I feel like the threatened by me thing only works in returning player seasons because then it's like the big people do get voted out early because they're threats, but not for newbies.
Yeah, I don't know. Didn't really agree with that statement. Jess is gone. I was fine with it. She was second on my boot list to go. So I was like, whatever, stop casting young people. But yeah, Goliath tribe. A lot to talk about as well. Kara and Dan will start. I don't know. I'm like, Kara, I like more than Dan now, which is very, very interesting because coming into the season, I was like, we don't like Kara, whatever. We love Dan. But now, Kara's just playing Dan. Dan is not that good. Like, Kara told Dan, you need to hide the hidden immunity idol. And then Dan doesn't listen. Jeremy says Dan is in a showmance, whereas Kara is in a strategy. Alex says Kara is playing Dan. And then Natalie tells Kara that the power couple thing needs to stop. So everyone knows that this twosome is a thing. First of all, bad. And then everyone knows that Kara is the smarter one out of the two. So Kara's going to be the one voted out. And in every single freaking showmance, Figgy, we saw her voted out. Jessica, we saw her voted out. We're going to see Kara voted out. And we're going to be stuck with Dan on the freaking island.
Yeah, I'm really upset that Dan is my winner pick because I feel like I kind of have to root for him, and this guy is just so stupid. Like, what? How did he get the idea that hiding an idol in plain sight was the right way? Like, my brain honestly cannot comprehend that.
Honestly, his reasoning was bad too. He's like, don't worry, babe, kind of thing. No one will look there because it's so obvious. Next thing you know, cut to Jeremy finds Dan's idol. And it's like, okay, season 37 of Survivor. Why would you not suspect someone to look through your stuff, even if it's the stupidest place to hide something? Like in this case, he freaking found that Dan had an idol in his pocket. Literally, just take 2 seconds to bury the damn thing. Or in the Rob Has a Podcast from this past week, Dominic was saying that he hid it in his bag, but he like cut his bag to make like a secret compartment for it. So you could do that with your cloth and make secret compartments and hide it in plain sight. But like literally in your freaking pocket, it's so bad.
Yeah, just you put it in a roll of socks, and I'm like, why?
That doesn't even help. When you touch the sock, you feel something's in it, then you'll look in it. It's not like you hid it in something like a fruit and you're not going to bite into the fruit and eat it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, just like 0 out of 10. Bad decision.
Yeah. Like, okay, I like Jeremy. I think he did really well this episode too. He says smart people don't put the idol in their pockets, hide it. And I'm like, I freaking agree, Jeremy. And people think that Dan's dumb and blinded by Kara. And I'm like, yeah, not good for our winner picks. And I think good. Jeremy and Mike are hanging out a lot more, which I was like, okay, Mike, things change. Mike is maybe not public enemy number one. We see the girls liking Mike. Jeremy is giving Mike all of this information. We see a confessional from Mike saying how information is powerful and Jeremy feels comfortable enough to talk to Mike about finding the idol, everything like that. So I think things are changing.
I think the best thing for Mike is the fact that Natalie has been so annoying.
Which I'm not even sure. Like, it's hard to say who could be the first person voted out of the Goliath tribe. If they go to tribal next week, whatever. Because even though Natalie is rubbing the people the wrong way, I mean, it really depends. I feel like because Natalie does have a semi-good argument. Why vote out the oldest person on the tribe? The way she's going about her freaking social game is really bad. But it really depends. Do you keep someone who's annoying you and can't win? Or do you vote out someone who's strategic, maybe like Kara?
The thing about Natalie is I feel like when there's someone who's so thoroughly pissed off everyone on your tribe, it's like you can dispose of them whenever. If you ever like, now it's time for Natalie to go, everyone will be like, yes, she's been annoying me for forever. So I feel like it would be interesting to see if they voted out someone strategic first because of
Yeah, because honestly, it really depends. Does this person get under your skin that much that you need to get rid of them? But people on the island will probably be like, Natalie's not winning the game. We don't necessarily need to vote her out. And that's tricky. Maybe you want to be the most annoying person out there, so you stay longer because no one thinks you're going to win. But then she is rubbing people really the wrong way. People are trying to help her. Like we saw Jeremy go up to her and try to tell her that some criticism that she can change. And she didn't listen, like straight up. And then John tells Natalie information. And it's more convoluted because I feel like Jeremy, John, they go up and tell Natalie this information about people voting you out, people think you're too bossy, whatever. But they're reaching out to her. So John says he wants to keep Natalie around, but then Jeremy's like, frick that. We need to vote Natalie out after their conversation.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where, like, if you were to go to tribal council immediately after talking to Natalie, you'd be like, I don't care. I want Natalie out. But, like, she's like a low level of annoyance. And if you talk to her, the annoyance spikes.
Yeah, but then it's like, who gets voted out then? Because we see Kara setting up side alliances with the girls. Natalia has Alec, Angelina has John, Kara brings in Dan, and that's a 6-person majority out of 10 on that tribe. And I honestly would root for this Kara, Angelina, Natalia threesome, bringing in their guys as like side things to make the majority. Like, I would root for that girls' alliance. I don't know. It reminds me of the Brigade from Big Brother, how you have the core, but the core brings in other people as like their side hosts, basically.
I think it's still interesting because I don't think any of the boys realize they're being the side host, except for maybe Dan. And Dan is just like, I'm so in love with Kara, so it doesn't matter.
Dan's fine with being a side hoe. Like, I don't know. I feel like this girl thing could get screwed over because everyone knows Dan has an idol, and I think that could come to play next episode. We saw the preview with Jeremy telling people that Dan does have the idol. And so, they don't hold as much power as Natalia says. Natalia's high horsing, like, we have so much power, we have a majority, but I don't think you hold that much power when everyone knows you have an idol in your alliance. And I think that's going to make Kara a target, or maybe Dan a target. But I think you would vote out Kara before Dan because everyone says Kara's smarter. So, I mean, that would be the way to go, to get rid of a twosome and vote out the smarter pair in the twosome, which just sucks because it's always the freaking girl that gets voted out and we're stuck with the stupid boy.
You see, what I would do if I was the girls' alliance would be I would convince Dan to give Kara the idol to hold on to for tribal council and then vote off my own alliance member in Dan. Everyone else would assume that the idol went home with Dan, so you'd have the idol, no one would know it.
Yeah, Trop13 in the comments says that if you find the idol in such a stupid location that you should be able to steal it. And like, honestly, right? If you find it on someone else's bag, technically, can you take it as yours? Because if you're
not allowed to, because it becomes a personal possession, and you're not technically allowed to take other people's.
I know, yeah, technically in the rules, but they should make it not a rule. Some people aren't that dumb. Like, obviously, if you hide it in the ground, you're not going to be able to steal it off of someone. But if you're that stupid to hide it in your bag or in your jacket, whatever, I feel like that's fair game. That's public unity property. It's like if you stuck it in your water bottle and someone borrowed your water bottle.
Yeah, just I understand why, just because stealing idols would just be rude, but it would be interesting to see like what would happen if that was allowed.
Yeah, it'd be like the purge. Like, oh, you stole it, hide and seek, loser, let's go. But yeah, I don't know. I think Natalie rubbing people the wrong way. I don't know. I feel like she could be good as the TV show, like Undercover Boss, where I guess she's the boss, but if the bigger boss came to her place and saw how things run, like, that would be interesting because I feel like that could be a lot of cool talk between her and like a bigger CEO boss or whatever.
She is the CEO, though, so there's no one above her.
Than that corporate CEO.
But she made the company, right?
I don't know. The biggest branch maybe, but who knows? If there's a like corporate and she's like the largest branch based in LA, then you get the corporate to do undercover boss in that branch.
Yeah. Just I think that the way she speaks to people is just like she does totally lack self-awareness, and it's awful.
Yeah, I think it comes with her job too, because as CEO, no one tells you how it is. They mentioned that she's been married X amount of years. Like things don't change, especially when no one tells you how it is. And I think a really interesting thing that I was listening to, it's like, the social awareness. Oh, you realize that things aren't going XYZ your way, whatever, but nothing changes because no one is willing to tell you that you aren't maybe working the right way, or no one really likes you at the workplace. And since no one will tell you this because they're scared of you, but then you just never get promoted, you never do this, no one invites you out on the weekends kind of thing. And this goes to show like, oh, Natalie's CEO, like no one is willing to tell her where maybe she faults in her life, social game, whatever. So like it's scary, but like good for Jeremy trying to talk to her, but it fell sort of flat.
Yeah, I feel like Jeremy, like, it was really interesting because I feel like he just genuinely wanted to help Natalie as a person in addition to helping her game, but she just shut him down. And I love how, like, the first thing she says when he's like, oh, you're not very self aware, she's like, yes, I am. It's like, of course, you would think that if you weren't actually self aware.
Oh my God, you're right. Yeah, so it will be interesting. I think next week we don't see a tribe swap in the preview, so I guess they're staying David versus Goliath. The preview was mainly about the Davids, I feel like, because we saw Jeremy talking about Natalie being annoying, Jeremy talking about Dan's idol. So maybe that comes into play, or maybe someone just becomes crazy and we see a lot of people on the Davids crying.
Yeah, I am interested in seeing where this goes. Like, I have so many questions.
Yeah, so I'm very excited. It's been a good first 2 episodes this season. We've seen so much from these characters. Like, I don't know. I'm just really happy and excited to watch this week. I think it's going to be hopefully another good one. Maybe we'll see Goliath go to tribal, because I don't really want to see like a pagonging kind of thing on David's where they're just going to vote out B or Carl next week. So we'll see what happens. I'm very, very excited.
I am also very, very excited. I would also like to see Goliath go to tribal council. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, I want to see these type A personalities fight to the death, see those egos coming out, the claws. Everyone's like, I don't want to be the first person voted out. I've never lost in my life. So it will be very interesting. Some more Natalie napalm, and no one will go out without a fight, I feel like, definitely in the Goliath tribe.
Yeah, so let us know in the comments down below if you also want to see the Goliaths go to tribal council, or if you want to see more drama for the Davids. We'll be podcasting next week, but until then, goodbye.
Bye-bye.